Compared to freestyle and backstroke, kick timing in butterfly is simple. There's only 2 kicks per stroke cycle as opposed to 6. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it's any less important. In fact, without effective kick timing, swimming fast butterfly is pretty much impossible. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. Kick timing is absolutely essential in butterfly. Largely due to the double arm over the water recovery, swimmers have to time their kicks effectively if they want to be able to position their hips correctly, and that allows them to recover the arms over the water with as little resistance as possible. Not only is recovering both arms over the water physically demanding, if done poorly, it creates a ton of resistance, which makes an already difficult stroke that much harder. Effective kicking makes all the difference. The 2 kicks in butterfly need to happen at specific points in the stroke cycle. One kick needs to happen as the hands enter the water, and the second kick needs to finish as the hands begin to exit the water. By timing the kicks correctly, it can help swimmers create more propulsion and, more importantly, position the hips to keep resistance, to keep drag as low as possible. Let's check it out. First, let's take a look at where the kicks are happening, and then we can discuss why it's important to execute the kicks at that time. So one kick is going to happen right there, and so the kick itself is going to finish as the hands are exiting the water. So there's going to be propulsion from the legs, there's going to be propulsion from the arms, and they're going to happen and they're going to finish at the exact same time. We'll talk about why that's important in a second. The other kick is going to happen, so the kick is going to start as the hands enter the water. So if we watch the feet here, you can see that they turn right there, right when the hands enter the water. And so the hands are going to enter, the kick is going to start, and then the kick is going to finish as swimmers reach forward and then they press a little bit with their chest. So those are the 2 kicks, and that's when they happen right there at the end of the pull. So the kick is going to finish as the pull finishes, and then upon entry, the kick is going to start right when the hands enter, and it's going to finish as the hands reach forward and the chest presses down. So why is the timing so important? Well, when it comes to the pull, we're going to get a big boost in propulsion here. And so actually, if you look at instantaneous speeds, this is probably the fastest point that any swimmer will ever swim. They can achieve an instantaneous speed that's faster than what's seen in freestyle. But of course, freestyle is faster, and the reason is as soon as this propulsive impulse is over, now there's nothing happening. So 1, swimmers are recovering the arms over the water, there's no propulsion with the arms, and 2, the legs are recovering, so there's no propulsion with the legs either. So it's really important to get that really big burst, that really big impulse, so that it can carry swimmers through the recovery where they won't be creating any propulsion. So that's one reason why the timing is so important. The second reason is that as swimmers pull, they're going to lift the upper body, and the pull itself can also have a slight sinking effect on the hands. And if swimmers were to try to recover when their head is up, their hips are down, and their hips are lower beneath the surface, it's going to be impossible to get the hands out of the water. So when the kick happens here, you can see the hips are going to lift up there. That's going to get the hands up to the surface of the water without having to lift them out. And then the momentum that's generated at the end of the pull, the hands can just slide out of the water, can just whip around, and it'll be very effortless. Now, if swimmers had to recover the hands when the hips were in this position, when they're a couple inches under the water, they'd have to lift the arms out, they'd have to drag them around, and obviously that is going to be very fatiguing. That's going to make a very difficult stroke that much harder. So it's absolutely critical for the kick to happen as the hands enter, to lift the hips up in the water so that the hands can be smoothly transitioned into the recovery without having to use much muscular effort. So hand speed is really high here, and if the hands are already at the surface of the water, they can just slide out and whip around. So that kick is really, really important. 1, it helps facilitate the recovery by getting the hips up, and it helps create a really big impulse of propulsion so that when swimmers transition into the recovery and they don't have any propulsion, they have enough body speed to carry them through that. And this position is going to be easier to manage if there's forward velocity. It's going to be much harder at slower speeds. Now, if we look at the body position here, swimmers at an angle. So if they were to move through the water like that, that's going to create a lot more resistance than if they were horizontal to the water. So following the recovery, they have to get into position, they have to get back into a horizontal position, and that will allow for better alignment, and that allows for less resistance. So the kick here, what it's going to do, you can see it happen. The hips are a little bit lower. The kick is going to be back and down, and if the kick's down, Up pop the hips, and very quickly we can go from this position, which is not very aligned, it's creating a lot of drag, and then boom, quickly we can get into a more horizontal position, and that's going to allow swimmers to keep drag lower, and that's going to allow them to swim faster for less effort. And so I'm sure you've seen some swimmers will start to get tired, they fail to get the hips back up in the front of the stroke cycle, and that just makes everything worse. The stroke becomes harder, the fatigue becomes more, and it's just a vicious cycle. So if swimmers can get the hips up, and if they can use the kick to make that happen, they're going to be able to conserve energy, and that means more speed. The second important aspect of this kick timing is that by getting the hips up and then the chest is down, you can see that there's a wave happening through the body, and then when that wave reverses, as he does when he pulls, it goes the other direction, and that creates the potential for a much more powerful pull. So not only are the hips getting up and allowing swimmers to get into a more aligned position, it's also preparing them and giving them the potential to create a more effective pull. So that elevated hip position, the depressed chest position, again, once it's reversed, it allows swimmers to create a lot more propulsion. So those two kicks are really important because it allows swimmers to get their hips up at really important points in the stroke cycle, and it allows them to create more propulsion, which is obviously going to create more speed. So higher hip position, that's going to mean less drag, more propulsion. We have those two together, you get more speed. Different swimmer, different angle, same things are happening. So as we see here, we've got the entry, that starts the kick finishes with a full depression of the chest, and then the beginning of the setup of the stroke, and then as the swimmer pulls through, that kick is going to finish as the hands finish. That's going to get the arms around, and we're back to the beginning. So the kick in the front of the stroke is going to start to happen as the hands enter, and then it's going to finish with the full depression of the chest, reaching fully out in front, starting to set up the stroke, and then as the pull comes through, the finish of the kick and the finish of the hands are going to be tied up. So it's ultimately pretty simple. Doesn't mean it's easy to do, but the timing is very consistent across swimmers. We're going to see, again, that kick happening upon entry, finishing when the chest is fully depressed, setting up the stroke, and then boom, we've got this wave of propulsion that's happening with the upper body and the lower body. Everything finishes at the same time. That gets the hips up. You can see them rise up there, and that gets the hands easily out of the water, over the surface of the water with a lot less effort. And then as you can see, this is not a great position to be in. This isn't a technical flaw. This is just the reality of butterfly. And as the hands come in, boom, the kick goes, the hips come up, and you can see the change in hip position right there. And that's happening, one, as a result of the arms recovering and the chest pressing. And perhaps even more importantly, it's the kick that helps get those hips up. So again, you can see the change in position right there. And we go from a position that is not very streamlined, it's not very aligned, to one that's very aligned. And again, we've now set up the stage for a really effective pull. And you can see here, you can see how she comes up out of that, and that's again going to create a ton of propulsion. And when we add the kick to that, we get a huge burst of propulsion, and that carries her through the recovery and into the next stroke cycle. So one more swimmer here, and so we've got the kick there as the hands enter, and then boom, as the hands exit. So we're going to have the timing of the finish of the kick with the finish of the pull. And as we can see here, the hips go up with the kick, the hands and the feet are finishing at the same time. You can see the hands go right up to the surface of the water, and there's no loss in hand speed. He just kind of slides them out and swings them around. And then as we come across, the hands enter as the feet turn, as the down kick starts. The hips come up as the kick finishes, as the chest presses down. There's a big change in hip position that happens really quickly, and that's going to be driven by the kick. You can see the hips are underwater here, and then boom, they're out of the water after that point. So really important in terms of the timing, and really important in terms of the effectiveness of the kick. So getting the hips up there, and then getting the hips up again there. And one more time from a propulsion standpoint, this sets up the swimmer to really set up the stroke effectively, to really create a lot of leverage on the water as they come up out of that position. And then again, timing the kick and the pull at the end, we're going to get a big burst of propulsion. That's going to carry him through the recovery, which he can get back into the next stroke cycle, maintaining as much speed as possible and maintaining great alignment. If you want to learn more about how to improve kick timing in butterfly, check out the video below.